All right, today's video is on radicals and square roots. So our learning target today is I can solve for the square root of a number. Please write down the date you're watching this video. Write down what you know, and this might not be much. You might not know what a square root is. You know what a square is, though, so you could write about that. Then we have 3 vocabulary words. A square root, which is a value that, when multiplied by itself, gives a number. We have the word radical, which is this symbol here, which means to find the positive square root. And then we have the word squared, which means to multiply a number by itself. So at this point, please pause the video, get all this written down, and restart when you're ready. So our first question kind of helps us understand where this type of problem comes from, and that is, what is the side length of a square that has an area of 16 square inches? So if we were to think about what this would look like, we would have a square, and we know that the inside of this square is 16 square inches. So I need to come up with what number on the side would give us a square that is an area of 16. So I know that the area of a square is the side length times itself. So I need to know what number times itself equals 16. I know that 4 times 4 equals 16. That means that my side length equals 4 inches. I could do this with any other sort of thing. I could say if I know that the area is 49 square centimeters, well, I need to come up with what number times itself equals 49. In this case, if I think about it, and if I'm not sure, I can think. I can do 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3, keep going until I would get to 7. 7 times 7 is 49, and you can use a calculator to help you. That means that my side length would be 7 centimeters. I could do this for any number of squares, for an infinite number of squares. And this brings us to square roots. A square root is what number times itself equals another number. Okay? So if I were to ask you to find the square root of 36, I want to know what number times itself equals 36. I know that if I were to think about the numbers, again, I could do 1 times 1, 2 times 2, 3 times 3, and keep going on my calculator. But what I'm going to get to eventually is 6 times 6 equals 36. But here's the thing. 6 times 6 equals 36. But negative 6 times negative 6 also equals 36. Because a negative times a negative is positive. That means that my answer is 6 or negative 6. Which leads to my rule, which all positive numbers have 2 square roots. Okay? Another way that we could write this would be to say, what number squared equals, for example, 81? This is the same as asking what number times itself equals 81. And again, for this type of number problem, I'm going to have 2 answers. So if I think about this, I know that 9 times 9 equals 81. But negative 9 times negative 9 also equals 81 because a negative times a negative equals a positive. So that means my answer could be 9 or it could be negative 9. Whichever way, find the square roots, or if it's given like this, both of these problems have 2 answers. Okay? Now, where things get a little trickier is when we use what's called a radical. So, for example, if you had this problem, that symbol, this is called a radical. And it means we want only the positive square root. The reason for that goes back to looking at our squares. When we have squares, we knew up here that the answer was 4 and not -4 because a distance, a length can't be negative. So a radical really is saying we're going to look at this as if it is an actual square. So when we are given the radical, then we only want the positive answer. So in this case, I know that the square root of 4 is 2 or -2 because 2 times 2 is 4 and -2 times -2 is 4. So that means that since this is a radical, that my answer would just be 2. We could also do it like this. If I asked the square root of 36, it would be 6. The square root of 0 would be 0. But sometimes when we get a square root, let's say if we had the square root of 41, you're going to not be able to come up with anything. And this is when you're going to need to use your calculator. And on your calculator, there should be a button that looks like something like that. And if you need help finding this button on your calculator, send me a picture of your calculator and I'll help you find it. But there should be a button that looks something like this. And if you put in, for example, the number 41 and hit this button, you're going to get a decimal that goes on forever and ever and ever. You're going to get a crazy, crazy decimal. And it's actually a decimal that goes on forever. And it never repeats. And it never ends. And that's one of the really cool things about square roots is that unless they have a perfect number that comes out really nicely, they're always going to be these crazy long numbers. So make sure on your calculator that you're able to find look something like that. And then that's going to help you a lot with the problems here today. Please let me know if you have any questions. Have a great rest of your day.